Introduction. A different way of living. Some dates are so pivotal that they change the whole course of history. Unfortunately, many of those dates lie comfortably in the shadows of obscurity. One such date in the life of A.W. Tozer has eluded me. As the story is told, Tozer, a pastor at the time, was visiting one of his favorite bookstores in downtown Chicago. As he was perusing the shelves of used books that were so familiar to him, he ran across an old book that he had never seen before. He purchased the book and took it home, and his life was never the same. The name of the book was Spiritual Counsel, and its author, Francois Fenelon, struck a warm chord in Tozer's own heart. Although Tozer allowed others to borrow many books in his personal library, he never allowed this one particular book to leave his possession to the day he died. He talked about the book so much that people began to inquire about it. As far as Tozer could determine, the book was out of print, and no other copies were available. One man was so interested in the book that though Tozer did not allow him to take it out of his library, he did allow him to come and type out chapter after chapter. Such was the prominence that Tozer gave to this book. Much to Tozer's delight, the book was eventually republished in an updated and expanded edition titled Christian Perfection. When you read Fenelon's book, you soon recognize a heartbeat that was also shared by Tozer. No two people were more alike in the spiritual realm. In fact, Fenelon's work so inspired Tozer that if you listen carefully to his sermons, you can hear the words of Francois Fenelon peek through on many occasions. Tozer, of course, was familiar with the works of other great writers, A.B. Simpson, John Wesley, and Andrew Murray, to name a few. But something about Francois Fenelon stirred the depths of his heart and his passion for God. Fenelon's book introduced Tozer to a whole line of Christian mystics, a word not highly acceptable in evangelistic circles during Tozer's time, or even during our own. And he went on to introduce these mystics to the evangelical church of his time. Tozer was not so much interested in literature as he was in pursuing God. And if an author could open up his heart to more of God, he was interested in that person. As you read this book, you'll find many of these old saints of God that stirred Tozer's imagination popping in and out, enriching the message that was so important to him. During his younger years, Tozer was primarily an evangelist. Although he was also a pastor of a local church, he spent much of his time going around the country, preaching in conferences and at churches and camp meetings. His primary message at the time was evangelistic. However, after he encountered Francois Fenelon, his message began to change. When we come to Tozer in this book, we are coming to a man who is aflame with the message of the crucified life. The crucified life and spiritual perfection. Now, what did Tozer mean by the crucified life? This entire book is an answer to that question, but here we can simply say that it is the life Christ ransomed on the cross, redeemed from the judgment of sin, and made a worthy and acceptable sacrifice unto God. This represents a quality of life that is far above anything that is natural. It is altogether spiritual, which is a result of a dynamic inspiration from on high. Another term that was not common among the evangelicals of Tozer's day was spiritual perfection. This term came from Francois Fenelon, and it embodied the passion of Tozer's heart. Tozer was quick to point out that he wanted nothing whatsoever to do with anything that did not have biblical authority, and he also threw out anything that was extra-biblical. However, spiritual perfection was a term that Tozer found to be biblical. As Paul writes in Philippians chapter 3, verse 12, "Not as though I had already attained, either were already perfect, but I follow after, if that I may apprehend that for which also I am apprehended of Christ Jesus." This should be the great passion of the Christian's heart, to press forward unto what the Apostle Paul called perfection.